are, how we feel, and how we actually move through the world. We're going to break it all down and see how this one idea might just hold the key to our inner balance. But first, let me ask you this. Do you ever feel like you're fighting some kind of invisible war inside your own head? That feeling of being a little unmoored or stuck or just fundamentally off balance, and for the life of you, you can't figure out why? Well, if that sounds even remotely familiar, then stick around, because this is going to shed some serious light on where that feeling might be coming from. So that feeling, that thing you can't quite put your finger on, it often points to a crack in what we could call our unseen inner foundation. And the key to understanding and, eventually rebuilding that foundation is this structure, the personality triangle. Just think of it as the core of your own personal psychological support system. So what exactly is this triangle? Well, it's pretty straightforward. It's the connection between 3 points: you, your inner mother, and your inner father. And let me be really clear here. This isn't just some nice, fluffy metaphor. This is a real psychological construct, something that's established the moment we're born, and it's meant to be the absolute bedrock of our inner support system. And this visual here, it really shows the ideal. When this triangle is complete, when your inner father and your inner mother are both recognized and in their rightful places, you get this incredible point of support. This is what true self-reliance is all about. And I don't just mean being independent. I'm talking about a kind of reliance that doesn't need constant validation from your job, your partner, or anything outside of you. It's a deep, unshakable trust in yourself as a whole, complete person. But what happens when the triangle isn't complete? What if one of those corners is just missing? Let's dig into that first potential fracture. What happens when the inner mother gets excluded from the system? Okay, so what's the inner mother's role anyway? Well, think of her as your connection to the really fundamental parts of being human. She's the channel to your feelings, your intuition, your connection to your own body. She's all about acceptance of yourself and others, and your ability to have real, genuine closeness in relationships. She is, for sure, the emotional and sensory anchor of the whole triangle. So you can imagine what happens when that anchor is gone, right? The whole internal world gets incredibly unstable. A person might feel like they're totally drowning in their emotions, or they might swing the other way and just block them off completely. This creates this deep, nagging feeling that something is just wrong with me, because, well, a huge part of you has been cut off. In life, this can look like intense competition with other women, or just being unable to ever truly relax and be yourself with a partner. You basically end up living out your mother's unlived pain or her own critical voice. Now, let's look at the other pillar of this foundation, because the system is just as wobbly if we exclude the inner father. It creates a totally different set of problems, but they're just as challenging. And this is such a great distinction. If the inner mother is the anchor, the inner father is the engine and the compass. He's all about forward momentum. He's action, he's implementation. He's about turning those big ideas into actual reality. He gives you structure, a sense of direction, and the ability to not just dream, but to set real goals and actually move toward them. And when that engine is missing, you get stuck. A person can have all the insights in the world. They can know exactly what to do, but they just can't act. A deep fear of being seen, of taking on responsibility, just takes over. For men, this can look like avoiding responsibility altogether. For women, it can turn into a deep mistrust of men, leading to hyper-control, that whole if you want it done right, do-it-yourself mindset. And your goals, they stop being directions and just become vague, faraway wishes. So we've seen what happens when one pillar is missing. But what happens when the entire foundation just crumbles? When both the inner mother and the inner father are excluded from your system? This is where that internal war we talked about at the beginning, well, this is where it gets really intense. Just let that quote sink in for a second. It really says it all. You see, there's this principle in systems that a vacuum always gets filled. And if your inner parents aren't in their rightful place inside of you, then you, the inner child, have to step up and fill those roles. You end up trying to be your own parent, which is a job you are never meant to have. You're forced to live a life that isn't yours, carrying burdens that were never yours to carry. And what does that feel like day to day? It's just painful. It leads to this chronic loneliness, that feeling of being alone even when you're surrounded by people. There's a constant buzz of anxiety right under the surface because you have no internal safety net. So to cope, you develop this desperate need for hyper-control over everything and everyone around you. It is absolutely exhausting. Okay, So I know that all sounds pretty heavy, but, and this is so important, this isn't about blaming anyone. It's just about understanding the mechanics of what's going on inside so we can start to fix it. Which brings us to the most important part of this whole thing, the path back to wholeness, the work of rebuilding that inner triangle. Of course, the first step on any journey is figuring out where you're starting from. So how can you actually tell if your own personality triangle might be a little shaky or incomplete? Well, the good news is you don't need years of therapy to get a hint. There are some really clear, practical signs you can look for in your own life. So let's do a quick gut check. Do you find yourself having imaginary arguments with your parents in your head? Is a big part of your life secretly about proving something to them? Proving you're successful or worthy or better? Or maybe it's the opposite. Do you live by the fierce declaration that I will never be like them? And finally, do conversations about family or even just a scene in a movie trigger a really big emotional reaction in you? All of these are huge signs that the triangle isn't stable yet, that you're still reacting from a child's position, not standing in the center of an integrated adult self. And that brings us to the whole point of this. The goal of rebuilding this foundation isn't about becoming perfect or pretending the past didn't happen. The goal is to move from a life defined by that constant internal struggle, by proving and resisting and reacting, to a life of calm strength. It's a strength that doesn't need to be loud. It's a quiet, centered confidence that comes from deep inside you because your foundation is finally solid. So the question to leave you with is this: what would your life actually feel like if it were guided not by that constant struggle, but by that quiet, unshakable strength?